Welcome to Baseball Biz On Deck, and today Mat Germain is here for the special Raise Up edition, and we're trying to find a little happiness. And, we've got a lot of good things to talk about, a few things to scratch our head about, and looking across all of baseball, it's always fun sitting down and chatting with Matt. How you doing today, buddy?
I'm living the dream still. I always will be.
Oh, I love that phrase, man. It's been a good year. There's a lot still left to it before the postseason comes. I think there's like 24 games left, but it's been an interesting week. Yep. You look over all of baseball, Matt, this last week or so. I mean, the whole situation with waivers. Goodness gracious, who was going to land where? Yeah, we didn't. I don't think the Rays really did much with it, did they?
Well, they didn't pick anybody up, but it seemed like everybody was gobbled up, or anybody that was worthwhile picking up anyway. It was gobbled up pretty early on. So the Indians and the Reds pretty much took whatever they could. For some reason, the Giants passed, I guess, on some guys. So I thought they could have used some help, but that's the way it turned out.
I don't think a lot of people were surprised that the Angels divesting themselves of so much. You'd hear maybe trying to avoid the luxury tax situation. The Guardians picking up somebody, and it was interesting because we wound up having to face some of those people while we were there just earlier this week. And one of them being a former Ray. Was it Matt Moore?
Yep.
Yeah,
it didn't come back to bite the Rays very much, but it was still something Kevin Cash wasn't very happy about.
Well, that first I want to say before we go much further, I want to thank Lou Schiff. He helped me out as far as getting some tickets back there right behind the dugout to see the Rays and the Marlins play at Marlins Park, Lone Depot Park, whatever you want to call it. Man, that was exciting to be up, to see that close, to see our players, and also to see Sandy Alcantara play, pitching Mr. Cy Young Award winner. And, he's not necessarily been at his best, but it was a great way to see a game. But then following that game, seeing what happened in Cleveland, it was a little disturbing, to not take the series. I didn't necessarily expect to sweep the series, but I was a little disappointed that we didn't take 2 or 3.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of arguing going back and forth in terms of who the shortstop should be for the Rays. There's a lot of guys that are a little more banged up than they're letting on, I think.
Yeah.
There's also, the Indians, for whatever reason, have always been tough on the Rays in general. I don't know what kind of aura that is, and how. I know the players don't pay much attention to it that I know of, but it's just one of those things. They always seem to have that similar style to what the Rays use in a lot of ways, but they're more contact oriented, and that seems to be very effective against the plan that the Rays pitching has in general. And so that's something that other teams really should be keying in on if they're wanting to beat the Rays, is that the contact abilities of the Guardians seems to be, getting the best out of Rays pitching more often than most.
Yeah, and I want to go back to what you said toward the beginning of that too. You were talking about maybe some of these players are more injured than you might think. Because I was watching Taylor Wells when we brought him back up, and I thought he wasn't doing fantastic at bat, but he was also flailing about, I thought, defensively too. And he's usually a great defensive player. And I heard earlier today that he actually had a groin injury, which would explain a lot of some of the sloppiness, you'd see out there on the field the last game he was out there. So I really do wonder how many of these guys are playing with injuries this far into the season. Again, only like 24 games left. It's not surprising to see that there's people, I won't say with walking wounded, but certainly have some injuries out there as well.
I think there's a different mentality between Kevin Kiermaier and Taylor Walls that the Rays haven't recognized yet, and I hope they do at some point, because Kevin Kiermaier was so confident, but he put up. He never took a game off, never took a play off. He was consistent all the way through, made the small plays, the big plays, as well as anybody ever could ask anybody to do. Taylor Walls will mess up the easiest of throws at the most inopportune moment, because either he's not focused or he doesn't have the self-confidence to know he can make that throw in his sleep. And I don't know where that lack of focus is. I know I see it a lot in him in a lot of different ways. When he plays with confidence, he can be elite both at the plate and in the field. But there's something in himself that he needs to find to get there. I don't know how long it'll take him. I don't know if he'll ever find it. There's guys like Chuck Knobloch who that ate up, like their careers were changed forever at some point because they just locked up. So with Taylor Walls, like the error that cost him the game just the other day, it was one of those moments where I was like, again, like every time I see him make an error, it's never like you can forgive an error if a guy is doing what Osleivis Basabe was doing, which is going way out, like ranging out and spinning and trying to make the play with every single ounce of his being. That's fine. I'll take those errors any day because I know the guy's trying his best. If it's a routine throw and you're charging the ball and you're going towards the bag at first and you're missing the throw by 5 feet right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but it's one of those things that can't happen for an elite shortstop whose job is to be that first and then maybe hit a little if he can, and I'm tough on Taylor Walls because there is so much pressure behind him. There is Junior Caminero, Carson Williams, a whole whack of shortstops, and Osleivis Basabe, quite honestly, who are better than him. Osleivis Basabe is a better shortstop than Taylor Walls. Why? Because I know he'll make all those routine plays. I don't care what elite play he'll make that once every 3 months at the Derek Jeter style and actually put it up that way because I know I can trust that. If I can't trust my shortstop for the easiest plays, what am I doing? He's got 6 errors already this year in minimal playing time. He's a a minus 1.4 defensive rating. When I land on Baseball Savant, they have a fielding run valuation that had him as one of the 8 worst shortstops in the league for anybody that has 50 innings played.
Wow.
So, I mean, if your job is to be elite and you're not doing it, then stay in AAA. Earn it. Like go down there and put up so much like Junior Caminero is doing right now, and that they don't have a choice. They have to fit you in some way, somehow. But he hasn't earned it, and they're sticking him in there in September, and it's making a lot of people angry because of it. I don't blame the fans.
No, and I don't either. I mean, I look back all the way to when we had Willie Adames, and we knew we had this young man Franco coming up. And I kept saying, well, we're not going to be able to keep Adames. They're going to do something with him. And a good trade was made. It was a good thing for everybody for him to go there. But when we had Franco, we said, look at this. We still got all these strong players in the minors who could be right there. Well, if they're not playing shortstop, they could play second. We don't know how long we're going to have Brandon Lau. I mean, those were conversations in my head back then. If you are that young man, Mr. Walls, and you're looking at number 5, Franco up there, and you're saying, I'm being measured by that. I can see where somebody might feel threatened, but for one reason, I don't think it's anything you'd be concerned about because I'm afraid we'll never see Franco again. But the thing of it is, yeah, okay. We'll talk briefly about that later. But the thing of it is, who's he going to look at? Like I said, he's got Basabe there. I mean, even Brujan potentially could be there. But looking deeper into the minors like Junior, and you're seeing Curtis Mead, all of those people, all those young people are coming up. And he needs to have the confidence. One thing you mentioned about Kevin Kiermaier, you think time and again, heart and hustle. And I think there's one more thing, and that's what you said, confidence. You may have the heart and hustle, but if you don't have the confidence to put behind that, the performance isn't going to be there.
Right. That's exactly what I think Taylor Walls' problem is. The self-belief in like all through and through. There's something in there that isn't, and he's admitted it to it before when he first came up and he had a rough stretch, and he said, I was beating myself up too much. I was being too hard on myself every time there was an at-bat that I did wrong. And, and I think that's baseball in general. People have to learn to manage that. But I mean, he's been in the league a little bit now. He's had more time, more seasoning, more time, to work through things. So at some point, like, I get the defensive abilities are elite, but I want him to earn it. I don't want it to be gifted to him. I think the Rays do a good job of building a competitive environment in general and having the depth where they can do that and manage it. So use it to your advantage. Like make him, want it so bad that it's just oozing out of him, and the confidence is there because of it. Right now, I don't feel it's there. I think the Rays are doing a disservice. They were in a groove. They had Osleivis Basabe kind of. He was having his own little struggles here and there after a little bit of a hot streak, but he was making great plays. He was energizing. He was having great at bats as well, like lengthy at bats, and I think that's a key as well. That's something we were missing today. Like, you were watching against the Red Sox, and there's too many quick at bats, too many easy innings that they went through, where you have to get things going when you're not being pesky and on the bases a lot. So I don't know. It's not the end of the world. The Rays have a tough schedule, so they can't have many of these games like today where they kind of, I don't want to say they gave up, but they sat so many of their top players to try to give them a breath right in the midst of what's going to be a really long stretch, that it was almost like they're saying, well, maybe we win it, maybe we don't, but this one's okay. It's on us, sort of thing. And then they're going to go on tomorrow to whatever it is.
Yeah, that does kind of hurt. Let's see. Did we have Siri out there today, or Diaz, either one?
No. Siri, no. Paredes, no. Diaz, no. So, like, I think it was just too many of their top hitters that were on the bench, and it was, I don't know. There's a couple of plays Luke Raley should have made that Siri would have made. And so I think, or even Vidal Brujan might have made. So
Brujan, I gotta say one more time, I love watching that guy run. My gosh, he's got the speed. And I see him out for a pinch runner now and then, and not surprisingly so. He got tagged today trying to steal a base. My gosh, that catcher for the Red Sox, I mean, that ball hardly hit his hand before it was thrown right back out, to the infield to tag Brujan. And I was like, that was just an amazing play for the Red Sox. You hate to see that happen, but my gosh, you have to respect the professionalism, the ability to turn that ball around just like that, to get it out there like that. It was like amazing.
Yeah. Ray's aggressiveness is, man, it's just, it's so baffling and fun and frustrating and fun and frustrating. All of these things.
You got a real cycle going there, Matt. Jeez. Yeah, I hear you. Hey, I do want to look across all of baseball right now, because there were some things this week while we talked about the waivers that I don't know that anybody really saw coming. And one of it was seeing the World Series Astros get swept in their own hometown and by a team that was under 500, the Yankees.
Yeah, well, I mean, it gives you that kind of a feeling, right? Where I think the A's had some success too this last weekend, and so there's a lot of teams that can. It's baseball, right? This is why the winning streak the Rays went on at the beginning of the season was valid, because baseball is baseball, and you still have to go in there and play every game. The Astros, I'm surprised about, because I feel like they should be way better than they're playing right now, and they're usually, a team that gets prepped for the playoffs pretty hard. Like, they don't take games off like the Rays did last year. So I think the Yankees fan base clinging onto that series, like as if it was a lifeline to being relevant for the playoffs, was kind of funny as well, because they'd have to win 21 of 25 just to be 89 wins. And that would put them just on par with where we expect the Rangers and Astros to be. So they'd have to actually win 22 of 25 to be ahead. So oddly enough, let's say the Yankees did go on a winning run and they had to use the record against the Astros to decide a spot. That would be interesting to see, because then that weekend becomes, really irrelevant. I think the Yankees are going to lose more than 4 games. They've got some tough teams they're playing too. So 6 games against the Jays, I think, in particular. We'll see.
I was watching the Angels and A's too. I think it was the same sort of thing. I don't know if the A's actually swept them or took 2 of 3, but either way, it was like, whoa. I mean, not that the Angels are hitting 600 or anything, but still, I look at them as a higher quality team than the A's right now. Of course, that's pretty much all any of the 29 teams.
I would go the other way.
Really?
Future wise, like I think the A's have a better future now with everything that's happened than the Angels. So if I'm Mike Trout and I'm sitting on the sidelines right now and Ohtani walks in the offseason, I'm asking for a trade. I'm not sticking around with this. I don't care about the whole one team thing. Like this, enough is enough, right? Like you're looking at a 5 to 6 year rebuild in Anaheim. Like it's insane. Like they have almost zero talent that's above par. Like I don't know, and it's so injury prone. Oh my goodness, it's just they dealt away 6 of their top 10 prospects in the trades to get those guys for less than 1 month. And their system was already 29th, maybe 30th in the league. So unless they go out there and convince, a dozen players to sign with them next offseason, which I don't see happening, I think they're going to end up having an even bigger fire sale this offseason and just wait for top picks.
It's got to be hard to be an Angels fan. I mean, as well as an A's fan, obviously. But you got 2 top talents. I mean, if you look at the Angels, they'll say, okay, you got Trout and Ohtani. You look at the Yankees and you say, okay, you've got Judge and Garrett Cole. But after that, you've got talent. Don't get me wrong. But man, it's like leaps and bounds difference of the quality of player that you have outside of those. And in each of those cases, those 2 top players command such a large amount of the salary for that entire team that the owners aren't going to pony up what needs to be done to get that team to the success, to win their division, to win their league, to win their pennant. Forgive me. I'm getting on my high horse again, buddy.
It's all good. I think the key there is convincing ownership. So both of those teams, the Yankees and the Angels, have extremely stubborn ownership. Yeah. And they're kind of, they have yes men working for them underneath of them. Guys that are just going to do whatever the owner leads to. So they end up making a lot of bad decisions as a result. They end up ignoring analytics or not hiring the right people for analytics. And right now that's hurting both of those teams. Both of them have very bad scouting going on. The Yankees, terrible. If you picture their system overall, like it's just not where the Yankees system should be. Because if you're in the Dominican Republic or elsewhere and you're an international talent and the Yankees come knocking, you're like, yeah. So every year they should be signing the top pick. There shouldn't be any discussions, but they've ignored that for ages. And so have the Angels. So they end up signing a glut of other players, which more often than not end up being overhyped and go through a system that's kind of glorified by everybody. And then they come out and they be duds like Miguel Andujar and a whole bunch. I could go through like their entire system over and over again. I won't make this a little bit shorter. but honestly, like I look at Perry Managian in LA and he has no way to guide things because whatever he says, the owner is going to override regardless. Right. So you're trying to do things in a certain way and you can't. And I think it's sad because the Angels should be one of those destinations. I know they have a great stadium that like the fans appreciate the fact that he seems to want to win. And that's one thing that they do cling on to is that, look, he's spending money. He's trying, he's bringing in big free agents. Yeah, he just doesn't understand baseball. And it's as simple as that sometimes, right? The Jays have not focused on depth ever, except under Alex Anthopoulos. And that's when they had their most success. Was under Alex Anthopoulos. And what did they do? Well, they kind of let him walk because they said they were going to put somebody in there that was going to not let him do what he wants to do. So, all these teams, and I enjoy it because as a Rays fan, you want them to keep ignoring depth because it helps us. And that's a feather in our cap that kind of, helps us overall. But I don't know how you change those owners' minds. I think sometimes they have to learn the hard lessons themselves. And right now, Major League Baseball is healthy in general. The A's might end up in Vegas, but I think the stadium situation in Anaheim isn't, extremely strong. No. We don't know where they're going to end up. So maybe a sale and move is in the cards for them as well. But Anaheim they do draw well. So I don't know. I think they'll probably stay.
Fan base is there. They love the team. They just haven't been real happy with the way some of the things have been done by the front office. And, I'm going to have Nick Morawski on here from Good Gas Talk back from the White Sox, because they're going through some changes with their front office too. There's going to be a lot of changes with it. I mean, you look, Matt, I mean, I keep thinking about the Yankees personally, saying Cashman's been there for more than a quarter of a century. Aaron Boone, anytime he sits in a post-game interview, he looks like he's just about ready to give an excuse. It's like, Mom, I couldn't help it. Jimmy did this, Mom, yeah. I don't know. It looks sad. Even that event with the Rays, with the umpire screwing everything up there, was a C.B. Buckner. That was one thing. But in that same game where Randy Arozarena got hit by the ball, and Aaron Boone comes out there as well as Kevin, and Aaron tries to say, I get it. I'm sorry. It shouldn't have happened. And we were looking at, was it like, is it 12 times that we've been hit and 2 they had, or was it 20? I don't know. It was insane. But Aaron Boone always looks like he's making an excuse for one thing or another. And it's like, as a fan, especially as a Yankees fan, I can't believe that they're going to keep him.
I sympathize with Boone to a degree, because I know, like I just said, Brian Cashman got extremely lazy this year. He built the team in the offseason, and he said, that's it. That's what you got. Deal with it. And it's not the way you run a team. Look at imagine if the Rays had done that this year. No Aaron Savale, no this, no that. Like all of the players that they went out and found, like Zach Littell, yada, all this, the guys that are supporting them through a tough stretch of injuries is because of the hard work they put in and the belief that they had in their development and analytics to do it. The Yankees have zero development and analytics. You might as well be us. We're doing it right now. We're doing their analytics work. And we're pushing it through, because that's about as much work as they're doing in New York. I know. Like, there's no way. They're getting established players like Josh Donaldson and Matt Carpenter for a reason, because they don't have to guess anything. They're there and they know what to do. So we plug them in. They shouldn't feel the pressure of being in New York, blah, blah, blah. That's their selling argument. And, then you don't have to pay that team a whole whack of money. It's just sad. Brian Cashman does have to go. I don't think, for whatever reason, they love him. So I don't think they'll fire him. I'm saying promote him. Promote him to president, get him out of that GM chair.
There you go.
And get a GM in there that will actually put a real front office in place. Like, let him focus on the stadium and sleeping out in the sleeping bag with the homeless and all that stuff. That's fine. He can be a PR person for you. That's no problem. But don't keep him in that GM role, because he is terrible. He's just the only great thing that Brian Cashman has done over the last 5 years is continuously build a strong pen. That's it. The rest of the team has been so subpar for that, roster and the city they work in and the budget they have. To keep clinging on to guys like Anthony Rizzo, who has back issues, are just killing him, and keeping DJ LeMahieu way too long. Should have been dealt last offseason. You're keeping these dinosaurs around Judge, and all you're doing is slowing everything down. Eat half of Stanton's money and let him go. Like,
thank you.
Deal somewhere. Like, why did you chase Carlos Rodon? Even the Giants, thanks for all the hard work, but that was like a glorious, injury-free year. You're never going to do that again. Frankie Montas, like, come on. Everybody knew he was running on fumes. He was like, every second start was like, there were so many warning signs he should have read as GM and not been as desperate as he was. I see him right now, like in New York, operating the same way as AJ Preller did, to try to bring in all these guys like Jameson Taillon, that it kept them so thin that then they couldn't make it through all the tough times. They didn't have the depth that they should have had to kind of survive those moments.
Wow. It is crazy. Like I said, I wouldn't want to be a Yankees fan right now. And they're passionate people. But, oh, gosh, and there's talk. You even hear about, say, well, maybe they'll get Don Mattingly and put him in as the manager. I thought, if I was Don Mattingly, I don't think I'd want to go to the Yankees. I mean, I know he's got a history there and a legacy and all that. But if that mess is going to be the same in that front office, I don't see where he'd have any, maybe necessarily any better success than Booney has had. I don't know.
I think they're going to get a new GM. I think it'll be somebody like David Stearns or somebody with like that kind of youth reputation as being somebody that can include a little bit of everything. Who David Stearns or somebody like that would hire as manager, it's tough to tell. I doubt they would keep Boone around. they might for a year. They do have to make that change. I think Hal Steinbrenner is going to look really bad if they go into next season with Brian Cashman, and because what it's going to do if they keep Brian Cashman in place and Aaron Boone in place, and all of a sudden those young guys start to struggle, like Volpe and Dominguez and the rest of them, and they have a bad first half, the whole roof is just going to cave on the entire team again, and it's going to be terrible.
Okay, as long as we're talking about replacing people and replacing things, I'm having trouble mixing organic and digital. Specifically, if I'm going to have a digital clock watching people who are pitching and batting, what I want to see is what they're doing right now in the minor leagues as far as calling balls and strikes. But this whole scenario with C.B. Buckner the other day, the home plate umpire during the Yankees, the Yankees and Rays game. What was it? Stepped out, came back in. The clock continued to run. The player did not actually get ready, was not ready for 8 seconds or 3 seconds. So the pitcher couldn't throw until that time. And therefore, the pitcher was beyond whatever that clock was saying. So there was no common sense put into play. The pitcher was penalized with a ball against him for not being in time with the pitch clock.
Yeah. I think, every profession has what you would call credible parameters that you have to be able to meet in order to perform the job, right?
Yeah.
To me, when you get to a certain age, your reflexes, your eyesight, all that stuff go down, right? If you cut off the umpiring age at 60 and force those guys to retire at that age and fill the umpires with younger people, that cuts out Angel Hernandez and it cuts out Buckner, and we can all live a happy life as MLB fans without talking about umpires who don't deserve an ounce of our attention, to be quite honest.
Thank you.
It's one of those things that irritates me to all heck, because nobody wants to address it. Nobody wants to do anything with them other than take more and more of their power away, because these handful of people, the rest of them do a great job. I love not knowing umpire names. They put them up at the beginning. I'm like, I don't know any of these guys. They must be great. Love these guys. But the guys that draw the attention are the problem. I should know their names. I don't want to know their names. Like, it's a sign that they're doing things extremely odd, or they just happen to be very exuberant. Like, there's some that, whether they're singing country songs in bars or doing whatever, like there's, there is that breed of umpire that were a little bit more exuberant, and you notice it. They have to get to a place where they don't allow guys to keep umpiring past that age, so that it limits that damage. There has to be a way to get these guys aside, give somebody new and young and looking to build a career as an umpire a chance, and just, cut it off. Come to an agreement. The umpires will probably even appreciate it, because it would get rid of a lot of thorns in their side, I think. So, yeah.
I'm with you, man. I mean, I think they should all join Country Joe West and sit out there and play some songs, get their own podcasts, and just have a good old time, because they are, like you said, wouldn't it be nice if you didn't know any of their names? I mean, Angel Hernandez is he'll be a legend in the infamous Hall of Fame for umpires, if there ever is such a thing. But yeah, they should be anonymous. They should not be anybody that we pay any attention to, because they should be so professional and so acutely aware of what's going on in the game that we don't recognize them.
Right. What I will say too about the umpiring also, and I kind of noted this during that series, I was like, back in the day, Tommy Lasorda would have been kicking dirt all over those umpires. Like there would have been some, pointing at the nose and spit flying. And I think the moments where that could have happened were mitigated by the video replay. I want to say that's doing an outstanding job of lowering the blood pressure of all these managers to the point where they can tolerate the ignorance in other areas. So to me, that's a kudos to MLB for putting that in, because it definitely is helping the situation.
Yeah, I'm thankful for that as well. It's interesting to think back when once a call was made and it was just obviously so wrong, and there was no way to go back to reassess if somebody was safe on base, and it would completely, move a team up or down or closer to the World Series. The replay, I know initially there were some people who were just, well, this just isn't part of baseball. Well, it's part of the new baseball. And if we had the opportunity to do it, I'm glad we do. And so there's so many new things that have come along with baseball in the last 10 years, even, that many of us have been slow to welcome, including myself, but have come along and said, yeah, well, it's a better game because of this. Anyway.
Right.
Well, all right, I want to take you back for a moment, brother. You had a post, I think it was today, on x.com or twitter.com, and you were talking about the players that the Rays have today compared to opening day. And I think you had, 14 players?
14 still on and 12 that are gone. Yeah.
And
gone. Like they could be in the minors or IL or traded, whichever one.
Take a look at those that are on the IL. I mean, because that's kind of tells the tale where we had to make some real strong decisions about new talent. Who are the ones that are gone?
And it was more the pitching, right? So I think that's what I was trying to show, as well as just the names in general and seeing the consistency they have. Because in the lineup, they've been able to kind of lean throughout the season on having a very similar group in that lineup, which is great because it does build some camaraderie, some continuance, and the guys can support each other. But on the mound, it's been absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
You have Shane McClanahan, Jeffrey Springs, Drew Rasmussen, Josh Fleming. Who else is there right now? There's Jalen Beeks is in the minors. There's Ryan Thompson that was originally with the Rays, and eventually I think they DFA'd him, and then he made it through waivers. They released him. And now I think he signed a minors deal with somebody. I can't recall exactly who it was, but you look at the pen and the deals that they had to make off. There's a reason that they have such a change, and brought in guys like Diekman. I think Kevin Kelly is one of the Kevin Kelly, Pete Fairbanks, and somebody else, I can't recall who, are the only consistent ones from the beginning of the year. Jason Adam just hit the IL recently, so that's kind of a new addition that I don't think many of us were anticipating. But the one guy who's going to be happy about that is Jose Siri, who's bailed him out quite a bit this year with some outstanding catches. When I was building the highlight reel for Jose Siri, I couldn't believe how many times it was Jason Adam that was on the mound, and he'd make like a leaping catch in the outfield, and I was like, geez, how much of your ERA do you owe to Jose Siri? Which is kind of fun to look at. But I wonder how many conversations are had after the fact in those cases. But yeah, overall, the pitching staff has seen a lot of turnover. I think the Rays have done a great job of building and / rebuilding the pen and the rotation. Taj Bradley's last start being strong was a huge bump, and I hope that continues because Zach Littell's kind of come back to earth a little bit. You can see the work they're doing and why it's being effective, but you can also see why he wasn't given as long a shot by a lot of different teams. So there's some hope, but there's some tedious, where does it stand sort of thing. But yeah, I think the roster being steady from now, and I'm still, I don't like to go off of just the latest and greatest, like just after the fact sort of thing. But the Davinsky addition puzzles me because they had so many options in the minors that they're very, very, very used to. I don't know if it's that they thought too highly of Chris. Maybe they threw him in the fire too quickly. I don't know. There were options that I would have went with first, or I would have had more patience with the guys down in the minors instead of bringing him in. And he's kind of, I don't want to say he's the result of 2 losses, but he's had the rough time his first 2 times up for the Rays. And it's sad to see because I think they were hoping for a lot more. I want to say too, like when they had Trevor Richards, he was a change-up heavy guy that, for some reason, change-up heavy guys, unless they can manage themselves. So like Ryan Yarbrough was a guy that could manage himself. He had his own repertoire of pitches and weird arm angle and whatever. Davinsky isn't that, but when they use their pitch mix for changeups, for whatever reason, they seem to have a harder time managing that than sliders and sinkers. It's kind of something to watch, for the rest of September.
Yeah, I was curious to see if we see any other players come up. Hopefully not up from injuries, but you talked about it was a junior Kiermaier, and I think Curtis Meads has been sent back down. Are there any of those folks that you think we might still see come up this year? Or?
I would love for Junior Kiermaier to skip AAA and just come right up. I really would. I think he could be as effective, if not better, than what Jason Dominguez is doing for the Yankees. And I think with the Walls situation, the injury probably still being there and him trying to tough it out, I think it would be a very wise addition. Whether or not they would actually go there, I doubt it. I think it's one thing to skip over AA and go to AAA, but it's another to go from AA right to the show. I don't think the Rays have ever done that, to be honest. Not in recent times anyway. And for an everyday players, I think if they did bring up Junior Kiermaier, they'd want him to play almost every day. It would mean a loss of somebody on the roster too, like a Harold Ramirez or something like that. And I don't think they're going there. If it's for Taylor Walls and he goes on IL, that's another thing. But
yeah.
Anyways, the other guy that I'm kind of curious about is Curtis Mead, like you mentioned, but there's another name that people should be paying attention to because he's not slowing down. He continues. And I think he didn't get the attention he deserves because he was always older in age for the level he was playing. And that's not his fault. It's just when he got taken in, it was Austin Shenton. And he's hammering the ball left, right, and center. And he can play third more solidly than Jonathan Aranda can. He can play first and DH. So it's a profile the Rays have a lot of. So he's in for a tough fight. But if Luke Raley, for some reason, needed some IL time or some off time and they had a spot in the 40-man to add, Austin Shenton is a guy that I think could see some playing time if needed.
Well, the depth of the Rays just never ceases to amaze me. I mean, they built a strong farm system, and it seems like they continue to do that. So the support is there. And what you said as far as making some strong decisions as far as pitching, keeping them moving forward. I think, they've definitely done that, certainly in comparison with other teams. And it's been a rougher season, I think, than either you or a lot of Rays fans thought would happen after we had such a strong early success. July was kind of a kick in the teeth, and August was mending a lot of that back. We'll see what holds, but I'm confident that we'll be in the playoffs. It's going to be tough times.
Yeah, there's not much reason to get, to be anxious at all about the end of the season yet. I will say that if they go on a little losing streak and lose 4 of 6 or 5 of 7, then things can tighten up quite a bit. And it wouldn't take much from that point on to have a harder time. Well, another name that I could see the Rays leaning on the minors that's kind of getting healthy now, he's in AA level, and they really were high on him last year, was Kobe White. So if Davinsky were to have a really hard time for another week or two, I could see them bring Kobe White up, and assuming he goes to AAA and continues to have the success he's had so far. But I look at him pitch, and I watched 2 of his games down the minors so far in his rehab step up, and I think he's a starter to me. He's a ball guy. He's got more talent and more pitch polish than Zach Littell does. So there's no reason for me to think that they can't eventually stretch him out into a bulk or starter role. For now, I think he would be the perfect kind of complement to the pen if he can get up to that level where they're confident with him.
Well, again, another reason to feel confident about the future of the Rays. And I am looking now at a glance at some 2023 MLB playoff bracket. It's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at American League, and not surprisingly, they have Baltimore right in there. It's number 1. I mean, we still have a chance to come up there, but Baltimore's there. We'll see them. I'm actually going to go up to Camden Yards. I think I've said that before. Go see that game. Seattle, they're number 2 right now in the ALDS. And so those 2 guys at the moment look like the ones that will get a bye. And you look beyond that, you're looking at the wild card with Minnesota, which is the ones expected to be the champions of the Central for the American League. and they will be facing Houston. And the other projection is Tampa Bay would be facing Texas in the other wild card. So fun times.
Yeah. You can see from that bracket why it's important for the Rays to win the division. And this is why today's day off kind of irks me, because there should be a sense of urgency in the Rays to avoid the Texas series and to go right to facing the winner of the Baltimore and Texas series. That's where their heads should be at. And right now I feel like I know there's bumps and bruises. There's people hurt, and I get it. Like Diaz's arm is probably a lot more sore than he's letting on. So there's good reason for it. But those brackets are sometimes, I don't know. Is it actually a benefit for a team to sit for 3 days? Like a lot of people have different thoughts on that, right? Or 4 days or 5 days, whatever it ends up being. You get all out of sync. You have to turn the machine back on afterwards. And so I don't know. There's an argument for and against. Like, how did the Phillies do going through all that whole gamut? They went out and beat everybody and went up to the World Series. So sometimes I think it's better to play in the earlier series. So maybe they're looking at it that way as well.
We will see, my friend, but a lot of excitement still ahead. What is it? I think only got 24 games left before the postseason. Oh my gosh. Mm-hmm. It'll be here sooner than we think.
I'll just say this, like the minor leaguer seasons are starting to wind down. So the Charleston River Dogs have their series already locked up. So they're going to be playing on the 12th of September, their series for the playoffs. It looks like every other affiliate for the Rays has a chance of being in the playoffs as well. But a lot of tight races down the road. So it'll be interesting to see. Like I always like to have that as a feather in the cap. Like how many playoff series have those minor leaguers played in a Rays system? Like there's some years where almost all of them were in the playoffs and all of them went deep. And I think there's the one year where they almost all won it except for Montgomery that finished second. So it was, it's one of those things. Like start watching the standings in the minors and seeing where guys sit. Because I think it's a lot of fun to watch those playoff series and seeing who performs well in those series and comes out, looking a little bit better because of it. At the same time, you're going to start seeing assignments, as those series wind down and finish. Probably early October, you'll see, names assigned to the ABL to go to play for the Perth Heat. Usually the Rays send about 7 players, 3 or 5. So, and then Curtis Mee goes and plays in Adelaide for the Giants. So that's another thing to look out for. We're still waiting for word on Wander Franco and what his situation is going to be. But also I want to say that Julio Urias is going to be, having a hard time finding a job in this offseason as he's a free agent and in trouble for the second time for a similar issue. So there's a lot of learning that can happen now too through, the system, through the minors, seeing these stars like Julio Urias and Wander Franco are not nobodies. They're guys that have been, in the playoffs, in the spotlight, phenoms, guys that have played on some of the biggest stages for the best teams. And we're looking at hundreds of millions of dollars, and now we're probably out. So, Trevor Bauer's another example. So I'm hoping that the league and the players cannot forget about these guys. These are learning moments that they need to use to teach anybody coming into baseball what that means. And they should be, I hope that there's a campaign at some point or some sort of, improvement in the punishment, because obviously it's not working. It should be either a one-strike system, or it should be something that is more effective at scaring them into actually not going that route.
Yeah, I've always felt like, and I've probably said this before, that there should be a mentoring system. Even when Franco first came on, I liked the idea that we had Nelson Cruz on the Rays, and I felt like there's a man who could probably be a guiding force for him. Person, who already had high standards, who had achieved a lot, who had been through the rough part of the road, and could give somebody like Franco a path. Now, I don't know what did or didn't happen between them, but with Franco, if you're thinking, if you're a Rays fan, you're thinking, oh, well, we're going to get him back. Yeah, go back and look to Trevor Bauer, because Trevor Bauer right now, what's been out for a year and a half or so, and now they're just going to be taking depositions this week, I believe. So this is a long time. Whatever you want to think about these people, whatever they did or didn't do, a career has really been lost. And there's been ways to avoid these things. Teams need, and players associations need to do more to help guide these young players not to be in stupid situations or do stupid things.
It should be this similar outcomes to what you would have in a regular world and not treat it differently. Like domestic abuse is a very serious thing taken extremely seriously by the vast majority of workplaces. I don't know anybody that could go back to work after it came out. No. So what is the, unless they get the help, they do this, they do that. Sometimes you have forgiving organizations that'll give people a second chance. Now, after the second chance, like A-Rod, for instance, should have been out after the second steroid test was failed. Like, it's a good example. You have to hold people accountable. And if you don't, then you lose accountability. And I'm hoping that MLB can use those situations as an example of what not to do and that it doesn't get worse, because it doesn't seem to be getting any better. It's happened on the Yankees teams. It's happened on the Rangers. It's happened on a whole bunch of teams. And if anything, it seems to be picking up speed. And that's a bad trend to go down.
Well, fingers crossed, and, good wishes toward all these folks, because we do need something to change. And I really, pardon me, I don't want to go down this road much here today, but that is something I want to talk about during off season. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about mentoring. And there's another topic I'm going to talk about during the offseason, which you brought up, I think, before, and that's looking at the Rays and how many of these young men wound up having the pitchers having Tommy John surgery and what can be done differently. So there's a lot that can be done to help these young players, I won't say protect them, but to give them some guidance to extend their career and to end up not being in dumb, stupid situations where they hurt someone else and or themselves. So, all right. High horse time. Like I said, I'll get off the high horse and soapbox, but Matt, it's always a pleasure talking with you, buddy. I tell you.
Always a pleasure. Sorry to offload that at the end, but I felt like, I don't know, it just came up in my mind. I was like, I'll just let it out.
No, this is the place for that, my friend. That's the whole thing. If we don't do it here, we just hold it in and say, well, somebody needs to do something about that. And that's kind of what we're saying here, but maybe we can put a little action to it as well. Maybe somebody out there is listening who will take a step inside the organization. So thank you, Matt. Matt, I tell you, man, as always, it's a great time to have a discussion with you and talk about the game of baseball, and certainly the Rays.
Always a pleasure, Mark. Always appreciate it.
Nothing but fun. So I'll be heading off to Camden Yards, and hopefully I'll have good things to report back from our visit with the Rays there. Special thanks to Mat Germain for joining us here today. Just remember, you can find Matt on Twitter at Matt, M-A-T, _Germain, Germain _. You can find me, Mark, at The Baseball Biz on Twitter. And you can also find me at BaseballBiz, www.baseballbizondeck.com, and anywhere you like on the directories, whether it be Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, etc. So until next time, thanks again, and we look forward to talking with you again real soon. Special thanks to XAKRUX for the music, Rocking Forward.